Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. I will introduce our speakers. Thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure being in Aapresid Congress. The question is it possible to implement no-till in all environments? This is a question that is asked more and more after all the narrative about the global situation, COVID, Ukrainian war, how did that impacted on agriculture, the impact of climate change. This question becomes more relevant. We are receiving many questions and inquiries on this topic. Is it possible to implement no-till everywhere? Is it possible to adapt it to different cultures, different soils, and different climates? We have really an excellent, outstanding panel. They are all pioneers. Before this question came up, they realized, or they asked themselves whether was it possible to implement no-till all over the world. It's not only possible, it is necessary in order to have agriculture, sustainable agriculture globally, and to reduce environmental impact. I will introduce them. Claudio Vela, he's an Italian grower, member of the Friends of the Soil Association in Italy. He manufactures agricultural machinery, and he's a passionate attendant or participant in Aapresid Congress. He will tell us how important this has been in his life. Francisco is agronomist. He belongs to Aapresid. He's Argentina, but he works with his company in Uganda, Africa. He has been he was able to view beforehand that it was possible to implement no-till. And the last speaker is also an agronomist. He's Mr. Guillo. He's also a tireless a grower that implements no-till, a tireless no-tiller, really. And he has always been concerned with improving no-till systems. And finally, John Marley, he's an agronomist. How are you, John? I don't know if he can hear us. He works in the NIABS. It's a private NIAB. It's a private research institute in United Kingdom. He works in soil science on different crops. He has been a researcher for more than 10 years now, and he will also tell us what happens in United Kingdom with no-till, about his experiences. Hi, Joe, can you hear me?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi.
Hi, Joe. Well, welcome to the Congreso de Aapresid, Código Abierto. And now the floor is yours, and start with your talk, please.
No problem. Let me just share my screen. And hopefully you can see that, Santiago.
Now we see your presentation. You can start.
Perfect, I'll start. Hi, everybody. My name's Joe. So I'm an agronomist and I'm a researcher from the UK. We recently co-hosted a delegation from Aapresid, and it was really great to have them in the UK and share some knowledge. So I'm very excited to be presenting back to you today to give you a little bit of an idea of what NIAB is and the kind of research that we do in this area in the UK. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. I wanted to be, but hopefully this is a good middle ground. So just as a start, in case anybody doesn't know anything about NIAB, NIAB is an independent agricultural and horticultural research institute based in the UK. We're headquartered in Cambridge, which is down on the bottom right of that map. And we've also got a dedicated horticultural research and development centre, again, East Malling, down on the bottom right of that map. We've been around for over 100 years, providing independent information into the UK agricultural and horticultural sectors. So we've got a lot of experience. Our income and our work is split across commercial research from government bodies and scientific research organisations, and also a small amount of sort of statutory funding stuff that we do for the UK. We've got 10 regional sites based all over the UK, and you can see those blue dots around the map. So at each of those sites, we've got staff that do experiments out in the field. So our science is very much that applied science out in the field, putting ideas into real practice. There's about 360 of us, crop scientists and agronomists like me, right through to the trials teams who carry out all the work. And a little bit like Aapresid, we also have a membership organisation. So we've got over 2,000 members of farmers, agronomists and industry specialists that sign up to NIAB to receive independent agronomic advice in the UK. And we also put on experiments, a little bit like the Chagrin system, to answer questions that those growers, our members have. I was talking to Santiago a couple of days ago, and the other thing that I was going to mention with regard to NIAB, which we thought was interesting from this no-till question and no-till in lots of different situations, is we're really lucky at NIAB. We have a collection of very long-term experiments, and these are field-scale experiments, so proper farm-scale machinery and in a field. And we're really lucky with some of the charities that fund this work that we can have this experimentation going on year on year on year. Because as you know in the audience, when you're dealing with soil and machinery, things tend to change quite slowly over time, and we need those sort of long periods of observation, which we don't get with conventional research. So you can see some of those on the screen. Some of those are 20, 30 years old. One of the oldest ones is 1899, one of the oldest experiments we look after, which is way over 100 years old. So we've got some really good experimentation sites around the UK to test out some ideas on. Santiago asked me to talk a little bit about what the no-till situation is in the UK and the crop establishment situation in the UK. No-till is pretty popular in the UK, for many of the same reasons that it's popular around the rest of the world. People are looking to improve margins, they're looking to improve the resilience of their systems and really thinking about soil there and improving the soil, and as we would say, earn the right to do direct drilling and get your systems in the right shape to be able to sort of do direct drilling. There's obviously a positive knock-on for environmental services. I've just heard in the introduction people mentioning that in terms of erosion and pollution and all those bits and pieces, and the same with emission cycles. And in the UK, farmers are actually incentivized financially to do some of those things as well for public good that we can gain from sort of the farm systems. However, we do have some major challenges with no-till and direct drill establishment in the UK. We have a very variable climate. We're known for our rain. We have relatively similar amounts of rain to some of the wetter parts, I understand, of Argentina. The thing that we don't have is distinct wet and dry seasons. We receive our rain in lots and lots of little pieces all through the year, and there's no distinct sort of wet and dry seasons really for establishing crops. So as you can imagine, those of you in the audience who are farmers and advisors, that brings challenges whether you're using disc systems or tine systems to have really reliable performance of direct drilling. It gives us challenges with things like residue management from previous crops, soil compaction, and increasingly over the past few years, we've had more pest and weed pressure, in particular weed pressure in direct drill systems, where we've had an over-reliance on non-selective herbicides, and we're developing resistance problems in those. And actually those two things, really soil and sort of weed pressure, we've seen some growers now starting to go back to introducing some targeted cultivation into these direct drill systems where they've maybe had direct drill for 10, 15 years at this point, to try and get around some of those issues that we can't get around other ways. And I think a lot of that is driven by our climate. And I've highlighted knowledge at the end because I think, probably like yourselves in the audience, the tricky thing about direct drill, and especially for us in the UK where we have such variable soil types and variable climate, is how to really apply these things onto your own system. And how to do that little bit of sort of trial and error to really understand how it works. And I think that's the bit that's often missing. And we don't have a dedicated organisation representing no-till like Aapresid in the UK. So maybe that's a knowledge gap that we need to fill. So with the last couple of minutes of my presentation, I was just going to show you a couple of little pieces of research that we've got going on at the moment, which links into this question of, can we apply no-till in all different types of environments? So hopefully you can see that nice and clearly on the screen. And what you're seeing is a really tiny amount of soil. So, no bigger than your thumbnail, really. And what you're seeing on the screen is I've put that soil in a special machine, an X-ray CT scanner. So just like you would at the hospital for your head or, an injured arm or something like that. And I've scanned the soil. So what you're seeing on the screen, the dark bit is the solid, no air gaps, no water gaps. And the grey bits that you can see on the screen are the soil pores, the things that give us all the wonderful functions that we have. So just to quickly explain, in the top right, image A, we've got zero tillage, direct drilling with continuous winter wheat. And that's what the porosity looks like on a very, very tiny scale. What we were interested with this experiment was, could we combine zero tillage with rotational options to try and improve the soil that we get under these direct drilling systems? So if we move from the top right, the top left to the top right to image B, all we've done there is taken the top left image and we've put a cover crop and some rotational diversity in. And you can see, hopefully, from top left to top right, how much porosity and different types of porosity that you get when you do that in that system. So that really highlights how we look after these sort of no-till systems and get lots of different crops in and lots of different types of roots to get those soils functioning really well. If we take that top right image, image B, and we go to the bottom left, image C, all I've done there is run a tine cultivator through that once per year. And can you see just how much porosity that you lose just by moving that soil, even just a little bit, and not flipping the soil like with a plow, just moving that. So you've got much more black space, much more tight space. We'd expect that soil wouldn't function as well. And again, if you take that image B, that top right image, and you just go down to image D, that bottom right image, all I've done there is just plowed that image just once per season. And you can see that it completely changes the structure, and much bigger pores and much less complex. And that's why we lose some of that resilience when we move away from these direct drill systems. So this is what we're really trying to understand. The reason I picked this image in the UK is I think we've done lots of great research around direct drilling and understanding direct drilling on different soils. The bit that we're trying to answer now is how we fit them into different systems and how it affects things like hydrology and nitrogen use efficiency and all of those other questions. So just my last slide, I was just going to highlight a couple of experiments that we have going on at the moment where we're trying to do exactly that. So the first experiment, number one there, is called Morley SAMS. Morley is a place in the southeast of the UK, and SAMS stands for Soil and Agronomic Monitoring Sites. And this is an experiment that's funded by the Morley Agricultural Foundation. And you can see the farm on the right-hand side. So that's a picture of the farm map. Where you've got dark colours, you've got highly stable regions of yield. And where you've got light colours, you've got, you all know those areas of the fields every year, depending on the crop, they go up and down and they've never really got a good pattern. And hopefully you can just see all the little black dots in there. And what we're doing is we're trying to understand what's driving that variation. So where we have direct drill systems and different types of cultivation and crop establishment systems, we want to understand the underlying mechanisms and then understand how nitrogen fits into that and fungicide fits into that to try and sort of build these systems together. So we're not just looking at direct drilling on its own, we're looking at it as part of the whole system. And the last experiment I was just going to highlight was number 2 there. It's got a long and boring, complicated title, Exploring Novel Wheat Genotypes for Regenerative Agriculture. But all that means is what we're doing is we're doing a breeding experiment. In the UK, a lot of our recommended list breeding for varieties that we grow commercially in the field is from a very high input system. So plough, power harrow, quite relatively high levels of nitrogen and fungicide and all the other types of inputs. And we're convinced, like many of you might be as well, that actually that's probably not the best way to select varieties for direct drill systems where we're trying to look after the soil, but it might be a little bit harder than the systems that we're used to. And we're trying to cut down those nitrogen rates and have these systems functioning much better. So this project is actually looking and using those long-term experiments that I highlighted at the start to look at the back catalogue of genetic diversity in wheat and try to understand whether we can find any really good traits, maybe aggressive rooting for a really good direct drill situation to help us grow some of those varieties in some of these more challenging direct drill soils. So hopefully that gives you a little insight into NIAB and what we're doing and what we're up to. And that was the end of my presentation, Santiago.
Short and
Thanks, Joe, for the presentation. Really interesting. It's exciting to see the resonance of the soil structure and how no-till is working for you in the UK. If you want, you can stay listening the others. They are going to translate it for you. Bueno, ahora le voy a dar el...
Now, I will give the floor to Claudio. Claudio, the floor is yours. Well, good morning, everybody. And thank you for attending this session. And thank you to Aapresid for inviting me. I'm Claudio Vela. I'm a farmer in the south of Italy, and we have been working with no-till for many years, like 25 years. The south of Italy is a complex area because of the slope. There is quite a bit of erosion. And with this, as there is slow and the heavy rainfall in Italy, we lose soil. And this was a problem for our yields. And when we learned about Aapresid in 2004, we thought that these systems would be, the no-till systems would be great for us. As you can see, this is the landscape where we work. This is a farm which is 300 hectares large. And you can see the soil has 70% clay, 20% loam, 10% sand. The remaining is just stones. But the slope is a slope of up to 40%. We grow wheat, barley, feed, legumes, and sunflower. So this is a complex scenario. We were not prepared to do no-till, but there was resistance to change among farmers, and there was no incentive to switch to no-till either. So which are the obstacles we encountered? First of all, soil porosity management. That's why we decided to use rotations with rapeseed, sunflower, etc. And we also worked with residue management, because it's not easy to spread out the residue with such a slope. We have a special piece of equipment to spread out the stubble. It was also very difficult to control weeds because we have to use a comprehensive weed management, and it was also very difficult to use equipment with such steep slopes, heavy soils, and operational issues. And of course, there was a limited knowledge of the system. This is the basis of all our problems. So what advantages could we talk about when we talked about no-till? Lower costs, reduction of fertility and soil loss, an increase in yield, lower risks, more diversity, and we had more time to properly manage the soil. And there was also an increase in our turnover because we were going to provide services to people who came to us asking for actions and information related to no-till, which were the keys for the success of no-till in Italy. Okay, the relationship with Aapresid and the knowledge exchange. That's why we have these field trips. We came to Argentina with special delegations to learn about the system. We do this quite often. And jointly, we create AIPAS, an Italian association of Friends of the Soil. In 2005, we had only 9 members. And for 10 years, now we have had over 100 members and many hectares under no-till. But we had to work hard creating, generating, and disseminating information. We carried field trips in our scenarios, which were different from those in Argentina. We developed planting technologies adapted to our environmental conditions, which were very different from those in Argentina, and we found clear results. And we set up a network, a cooperation network, which were our achievements in 25 years with no-till: development of plant technology, the capability or the ability to work in fields with steep slopes. It was necessary to adapt the planters. Our work width was 2.5 meters, and we had to expand it. And we learned how to manage the residues on the soil. We also learned how to deal with the stones and pebbles at planting time. And finally, we learned how to work in non-optimal conditions, because we do a lot of winter crops. So usually the soil is quite humid, or we have to plant much earlier. So humid soils with a lot of clay make our work much more difficult. So we achieved a lot in 25 years. Here you can see pictures of our work, and you can see clear improvements, benefits as compared to the traditional methods. And of course, this is the result of a long time of hard work. We also were able to get the European Union to create incentives for no-till, because they understand this is a system that will reduce erosion, improve the environmental conditions, carbon sequestration, etc. So some farmers that have been doing no-till for over 10 years are fully convinced and fully certain they will not go back to traditional farming systems. So we are going to use no-till in an increasingly large numbers, and we know we won't go back to the former methods. This will help the climate, improve carbon sequestration, etc., which are our challenges today, to communicate and spread information about the system in the region and share and create information about no-till as part of a continuous improvement process, because we have to improve continuously. And of course, our challenge is resistance to change. We have to change farmers' mindset, way of thinking. It's not easy. So we have to work on these 3 areas. Some final thoughts. It is possible to use no-till successfully throughout Italy, but we should never stop learning and improving. So that's why we are working together with Aapresid, so that AIPAS and Aapresid will communicate information about the system, improve it, and so that more farmers will join us. We are going to create information about this and write reports so that the information is better spread. Thank you for your presentation. Francisco. Good morning, I'm Francisco Podestan. I was invited to join this panel to share our experience in Uganda, Africa, to let you know how we have implemented no-till there, the challenges we faced, etc. This started in 2014 when the Prince brothers from the US and Eduardo Brown, who had been living there for a long time, invited me to travel to Uganda to find out whether such an agricultural project was possible. First of all, I had to find out where Uganda was. I knew it was in Africa, but not exactly where. Uganda is in the center west of Africa, and if we zoom in on the country, it's quite a small country. It has the size is 70% of the size of the province of Buenos Aires, and the population is 45 million inhabitants. The population growth is fast. Each woman has 5 or 6 children, so it's a poor family with high population growth rates, but productivity or yields are quite low. And this is a scenario found in most of the countries in Africa, where yields are low and population growth is fast. In the case of Uganda, most of the farmers use manual labor, and extensive agriculture is quite limited. The weather conditions well. It's a tropical country, so temperatures remain stable throughout the year, but the advantage is that the altitude is 1,100 meters above sea level, so the temperatures are not very extreme, and the rainfall is distributed along 9 months between 1,100 and 1,600 millimeters, and there are 2 peaks here, one in April, May, and the second one in September through November. So with that distribution, we're able to plant 2 summer crops, and the critical time of each crop, we try to get them to match with those peaks of heavier rainfall. So we are able to plant 2 crops with good rainfall. Now, what happens with the soil? Usually, tropical soils are acidic, lot of alumina, and I was surprised to find out that we started in the center of Uganda and we found loamy soils, 4.5 or 5% of organic matter. This is loamy clay, but we have an issue between 30 and 70 centimeters. When we go to the north, where we are planting now, we have savannas, sandy soils with 3 or 3.5% of organic matter, deep soils, more susceptible to having too much water. But the limiting factor there is pH. pH ranges between 5.1, 5.3. You may grow without using lime, without liming, but you don't need to liming. You don't need to start with liming, as you must do in other tropical areas. When I saw these soils and this weather and the chance of having 2 crops a year, I was clear about this fact. So I knew we could use no-till, crop rotations, I realized it was possible to grow crops there. But my partners, especially the American ones, were not so certain. When they talked to people in the region of Uganda, they were told, no, they only had conventional agriculture there. They were not fully convinced, but we started anyway. The beginning was slow. We started with a planter for 4 rows, and the first years were tough because there was a challenge of setting up a technical team, buying the equipment, the machinery, creating, developing and training tractor drivers. We started with a conventional approach. There, the most important crop in Uganda, the most important crop is the white corn. Soybean is not well known, so we began to use conventional agriculture. And we did corn over corn over corn. With soybean, we didn't have good results early on, so we went back to corn. So we would harvest corn by the end of July. The following day, people came back to the ears. We waited for 10 days. We had glyphosate, and in between crop and crop, voluntary corn would grow. And we didn't have good results at the very beginning. I kept on insisting that the only way to solve this problem was no-till on rotations. And at some point in time, with the assistance of Juan Agutan, we switched to no-till very quickly. In 1 or 2 years, between 2019 and 2020, in 1 year, we switched from conventional farming to no-till. This was because there was no other way of doing things. At the very beginning, the biggest advantage of no-till is that it expanded the planting window because of the surface water, for example, and we improved the operations. We didn't have to use tractors with disc brakes, etc. And we were able to plant immediately after corn after corn. So things improved. So after 5 or 6 years, 5 or 6 crops, the yields did not improve, and we had to insist over and over again that this was the way to go. Of course, there were weeds issues. There are GMOs there, and we started. Very often there were some plots which we had to work on the second semesters, and they were just left on their own, and we had weeds, seeds, creating new weed, and we went back to scratch. So finally I convinced them that we had to use cover crops. Fortunately, 3 years ago, yields began to grow, and once they began to grow, we began to invest most in fertilizers, weed killers, fungicides.
And now all these benefits of no-till are being reflected in the yield. And at the same time, water erosion was significantly reduced. We had gullies all over the place. And to close, we started with no-till for need, because we really needed it. But now all my partners, my technical team, everything from Uganda, are really convinced and persuaded that this is the only and the best system for agriculture in Uganda. And they are very pleased, they are very happy. And many of the fields with which we started to work, we started from the very beginning with no-till, with no adaptation. And other people are starting to copy us. And my final reflection, Uganda has millions of hectares which is not planted, where no production take place. I think that they are in a situation to implement no-till in all that land. So it's not only necessary, it's absolutely necessary. Not only possible, but absolutely necessary. Thank you very much, Francisco. Hugo, please. The floor is yours.
Muy bien, buenos días.
Good morning. There is a QR code. You can scan it to send questions to Joe, Francisco, and Hugo. Yes, I forgot to tell you this. If you cannot scan the QR code, you just raise your hand and you can ask the question here. Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to participate in this diverse panel. It's a pleasure, really. When I was invited to participate, they told me the topic is no-till system possible in all environments? And I thought, does this title make sense? But because I thought that this question was too basic, too elemental. But when they asked me why they were asking, see, because there are several diverse environments where no-till is being implemented, and I decided it makes sense. And so I will share with you my experience throughout the years, quite a few, I must say. I will start with some history of no-till. In my case, in 1975, I was lucky enough to start with no-till, November 1975. We harvested on no-till, and we were planting second crop. So it's 50 years ago. It was strange to have the possibility of no-till, to have double crop, because soybean was only starting then. So with no-till, double crop was easier, made more sense. It solved the problem of wind and water erosion. And we were able to capture water better. So expansion of no-till with double crop fit perfectly. The only problem we had is that we required knowledge to solve the wheat problem. We didn't have a wide range of products as we have today. There were other alternatives, and in as much as we were able to solve this, the double crop expanded and worked very well. This in the 80s was started with corn. In late 80s was started with wheat. And then we started to have nutrition problems. We have to feed the soil because the nutrients were lost because agriculture was intensified. Then we only used nitrogen as fertilizer because phosphorus appeared in the 80s and sulfur in the 90s. So we had those problems, but we were able to solve them. Today we have far more complex and diverse problems. We are producing in 3 regions: the core region, Córdoba, together with Santa Fe, in the core area, also in Trenquelauquen, in West Buenos Aires, in almost La Pampa, and in Conesa, Rio Negro, in the northern Patagonia. In the center area, the core area, we have a rotation for many years now of corn, wheat, soy. Through trials, which was started, long trials, long experiments that were started in the late 90s, together with in private public projects, in the INI, INTA and Aapresid together, we thought that with intensive agriculture, with a grass crop every year, where we work with different criteria, but we already were considering to replenish nutrients. We supposed that organic matter would grow a lot, but we were surprised to find that only very degraded environments with more than 100 years of agriculture, at the best situation, or to the most, it could grow at to the most 10% in the depth 1 to 18. The yield was 8.5, 10 per year. This was a good economic result, because with that rotation and that productions, numbers closed from the profit point of view, of the business point of view, but not when we think about improving the organic matter in only 0.5%, but with talking about carbon sequestration, if we change the rotation, we will increase that reduction of organic matter. We generally don't combine wheat after corn. We want to find an alternative to eliminate some stubble. Now we are doing bales with the last part of the corn plantation, and these bales are being stored in silos as fiber. And we try to reduce carbon print and change part of the synthetic fertilizers and replace them with more natural. We also have manure in our equation. So we are trying to find ways to improve carbon content, soil carbon content. This is the west area in Trenquelanqui. The green shaded areas is the crop, and the yellow area is the cattle breeding or livestock breeding. We also try to capture soil carbon. We are conducting experiments both in livestock and agriculture in order to take the best advantage of each environment and to do site-specific or environment-specific production. We rotate corn with cover crops, soybean, and also we do environment-specific production when it comes to cattle breeding. Here we have stubble after the corn. It can be broadcast planting. We also plant oats, veg, and we try to provide grazing with a good condition of the soil, not so we don't impact or have a negative impact on the soil. The result here is to produce beef or come up with bales or produce bales. So these are different alternatives to improve soil carbon capture. The production here is not as stable as in the central area because the capacity to store water in the soil is not so high, but we are about 4.5 tons per year, tons of grain per year, per hectare per year. We are trying to have a mixed system that enables us to obtain carbon bonds or carbon credits. Going to the southern area of the country, this is the Rio Negro Valley. We are working here since 2010. We are trying to explore new situations. This is a joint project together with Magali Gutierrez. Production is feasible with irrigation because this is a semi-arid. The rainfall is 200, 300 meters per year, so we can we won't make it without irrigation. And there is a condition here of radiation or sunlight and temperature. If we compare this with Pergamino, radiation right now at this time of the year is 20% more. Temperature may be 5% less or lower. In general, we don't understand so clear. I always say that in summer, the factory of light is open 2 more hours. So to generate soil, to generate production, and to enable any model, it's easier than in other regions because we have more period of photosynthesis. But we need 10% more of risk. The soil is poorer. We have to develop it with service crop, with grass crops. It takes 3 or 4 years, but once you get it, you can have wheat crops that yield as much as 8 or 9 tons per hectare. Yesterday, somebody talked about the vetch as a service crop with voluntary crop that is used for grazing. It is grazed throughout the winter. The region needs to produce forage over winter. Also, after that, comes soybean with a yield of 14-15 tons per hectare, and also a soybean with 4.55 tons per hectare. Magali is here in the picture. She helped us to establish wheat in the region. So far we were working only with corn and soybean, but now rotating these 3 crops, we might reach a yield of 9.5 tons per hectare. And generating soil carbon is much easier. Here we have a chart that shows what happened in 2020 after 7 years. This shows how organic matter grows from a baseline situation, irrigating. We irrigated 2.37 tons per hectare per year. And in the center region, we can get not more than 4 tons or 5 tons per hectare. With alfalfa in 2022, Magali, in another project in the same region, increased organic carbon per year by 4 tons. And also engineer Serota, in another situation in pristine soil, we had 1.3, and after 8 years they reached 2.27% of organic matter. So this is more achievable. It's easier in a natural environment. Environmental conditions, high production, generate soil, generate productivity in other environment and other places.
Today we grow onions, grapes, potatoes, pears, everything that can be done there because you have water and radiation, which are the two basic elements we need to produce. The soil can be built up, created, improved. As our colleague told us about Africa, and if you use all the resources correctly, and if there is a good coordination, you may create soil uptake carbon and have an increasingly stable production. Thank you very much. Thank you, Hugo, for your presentation. We have received some questions. This is a question for you, Hugo. How do you manage irrigation in service crop? You have talked about wheat, and is it
Voluntary.
Hairy wage and voluntary weed, well, this is an issue because it causes losses in the area. So if you use irrigation after harvesting plus veg, well, it's a good grazing plot. It's not the ideal thing because we may have problems in the neighboring wheat plots. So if the wheat is always covered, always green, always alive, if you have water and the right environmental conditions, we have to produce. And this creates soil and this virtuous circle. This area, we have the ideal conditions to have a green soil, a soil that is alive, and is it profitable to have a service crop that will be used by cattle, that will be grazed by cattle with irrigation? Yes, it is profitable, because though the demand for some crops amounts to 80 or 90% of risk, well, as the water is close to the surface, 3, 4, or 5 meters deep, the energy cost is not that high, and productivity is so good that all the other costs are the same costs you have in other regions. Sometimes they're even lower because we are closer to the ports. But so productivity, the additional productivity you get, makes up for some other costs. And cattle breeding is also a good tool in that area. Claudio, for you, is the weight of the machinery used in no-till? Does it affect the texture and the conditions of the soil? What about, did you have to change the weight of the equipment? No. We went through a complex process because we had to increase the power of the equipment without increasing the weight, because as we have a lot of as we have steep slopes, if the equipment is too heavy, well, it is difficult to drive them. So we use elements that are much better, equipment that is better but not heavier, and the equipment has to transfer the load to the tractor so there is good adherence to the soil. Thank you. Francisco, for you. How did you overcome this issue of equipment, inputs, and training of staff in Uganda? Of course, there were no contractors in Uganda, so we had to do everything ourselves. We did the following. We imported equipment from Brazil and the US. We tried to use just one brand because of a spares availability issue. We brought mechanics from South Africa for the maintenance of the equipment, and I believe the most difficult part was to create a team to drive and manage machines, and people who could monitor the crops, calibrate the equipment, etc. We still have a long way to go, but nowadays we have a large team from Uganda. Early on we worked with people from Argentina, but for 3 years now our whole team is made up by natives of Uganda, and we use protocols, stringent protocols. All the processes have a protocol, a step-by-step description. So in my case, the technical team that works with me in the field, they bring in new people, they train them, and this is how the team grows. It's not easy, but, well, I know that. Joe, a question for you. Can you hear us? Can you hear us? This is a question for you. What do you think about the future of no-till in the UK? Do you believe it's going to grow? The acreage is under no-till is going to grow in the UK?
Yeah, I don't think that the acreage will decline. I think, as I said, the limiting factor in the UK is fitting it into lots of the different systems that we have. So I think it's likely to grow, and the government incentivization to treat the soil better and to improve margins for farmers, I think will also cause it to grow. The limiting factor is probably the knowledge and the extension of that knowledge, actually getting it out to the people who need it. And we don't have centralised functions for that in the UK. We don't have a government-funded centralised agricultural advisory service. So that's probably something that's missing and something that we're trying to do. And it's one of the reasons that we were keen to talk to the guys from Aapresid and see how that you guys did that in Argentina.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you very much. Bueno, nos quedamos.
Well, we have run out of time. We have just 1 minute left. I have 2 questions left. Please address the speakers face-to-face after the session. During the break, I don't have time to ask these questions now. I'd like to stress the importance of this panel. There are 4 panelists here who represent Aapresid's mission to promote sustainable production systems throughout the world. And this is what we have to do if we want to be good agronomists, to promote and disseminate sustainable systems that help food security, that help the common good, and that make the world a better place every day. Thank you very much to the 4 members of the panel. Let's give them a round of applause. Well,